2 years ago today, former Grand Rapids, Forest Hills Northern, and Michigan State punter Mike Sadler unexpectedly passed away in a car accident in Wisconsin. To honor his legacy, the Huge Radio Network will replay the Mike Sadler tribute show we originally aired on July 25th, 2016, to celebrate the life of Mike Sadler on and off the field.
And we welcome you all across the Huge Radio Network to The Huge Show. Joe Jason sitting in for Bill Simonson today. And when we first discussed that I'd be filling in for Bill, we were talking about some of the topics that would be coming up for today. And however, all of that changed with the bad news that we received. Because Mike Sadler, the former Michigan State punter, and someone who is local and near to our hearts in the Grand Rapids area on our flagship station at 107.3 WBBL FM, a Forest Hills Northern grad at 24 years of age, died in that car crash. We found out news of it, but former Michigan State punter Mike Sadler, the four-time academic All-American ranking among the top punters in school history, died in that single car accident in Wisconsin. Nebraska senior punter Sam Foltz, the reigning Big Ten punter of the year, also killed in the crash that occurred in Merton, Wisconsin. And that's according to the Sheriff's Department in Wisconsin's county there where that city is. And they were working on a kicking camp over that weekend in Wisconsin. Police said that Sadler was the driver and that speed appeared to be a factor in the crash. He was pronounced dead at the scene. Foltz was 22 from Greenlee, Nebraska. Also a second passenger, LSU kicker Colby Delahousse, 21 of New Iberia, Louisiana, was transported by ambulance to the Memorial Hospital for treatment. But the news is tragic, and we're going to focus that today on The Huge Show. Joining me in the studio is not only a former Spartan at Michigan State, but also someone who's part of the Forest Hills Northern family, a graduate of 1988. Mitch Lyons has joined us today. Mitch, we all have heavy hearts today. This isn't what we expected to be talking about, but here it just kind of smacks us right in the face.
Yeah, it sure did. Got a call. Certainly wasn't what I was expecting, and just gut-wrenching. And to hear you even, read that again, it just makes my hair stand up, and just it's an awful feeling. Anything
in your memory that you had to deal with this with a teammate or a schoolmate at the time that would compare even to this at all?
Fortunately, no. I don't recall this happening. Just unfortunate. Just anytime a young person passes away, but not that one life is worth more than others. But Mike just had so much promise, and it's just tough. It's really tough.
Oh yeah, you bet. With Sadler, I mean, his next chapter in life wasn't necessarily going to be that next chapter that a lot of collegiate athletes hope for, and that's to make it into the NFL and kick there. He had completed his work at Michigan State University. He was on his way to Stanford to get a law degree. I mean, the world was this young man's oyster.
It really was. I mean, he was an accomplished athlete, obviously, but he came to Michigan State with, I think, over 30 credit hours just from advanced placement classes at Forest Hills Northern. And, he got an engineering degree in 3 years and a master's in public policy within another couple of years. And like you said, on his way, and I got a call from him earlier this spring. Here's probably one of the most decorated academic athletes in Michigan State's history. And he's calling me up and he says, yeah, I'd really like to get a reference or a letter of recommendation from President Simon. Do you think she would do that for me? I said, Mike, are you kidding me? I said, of course she would do that for you. I don't want to speak for her, but I'm pretty sure she'd be happy to do that. But that's the kind of kid he was. He was humble and didn't put himself above others, and in fact put himself below others. And that's why I think you see this outpouring of respect and just love on Twitter and all his teammates and former teammates. And he's a special person.
Well, for those of you who don't know, a first four-time academic All-American in school history. That tells you about the kind of young man that he was, not only on the football field, but in the classroom. Two-time first-team academic All-American in 2013 and 2014. National Football Foundation Scholar Athlete Class of 2014. And the 2014 William V. Campbell Trophy finalist for the top scholar athlete. As a 4-year starter at punter, he finished his career ranked among Michigan State's all-time leaders in punts. punting yardage and punting average, a valuable weapon on special teams, placing 39% of his career punts inside the 20. Now, normally during this time of the show, we would ask that you'd call and kind of give us your thoughts on our MontelConstruction.com huge question of the day. And I'm sure the folks at Montel Construction won't mind at all if we kind of switch it up a little bit and get your reaction to any of stories that might come your way about the news of Mike Sadler, and maybe put a silver lining on this if you know some great stories about Mike and you knew him from the days at Forest Hills Northern or throughout the network if you knew him and he touched your lives anyway at Michigan State University. We invite you to give us a call on the Miller Lite hotline at 866-838-HUGE. That's 866-838-4843. Again, the terrible news, Mike Sadler, the former Michigan State punter, died in a crash. He was the driver in a single-car crash, lost control on wet pavement, left the roadway, struck a tree. He was pronounced dead on the scene. Nebraska punter Sam Foltz also died in the crash, and LSU kicker Kobe Delahousse, who was transferred to the hospital with injuries. They were all attending a weekend punting camp. And this is a guy who really could have just, Mike was a guy who probably could have just rolled it up and said, I'm going to move on to different things. But obviously he felt he had something to give to the collegiate punters and was working with them at a camp, and just probably one of many times that he'd done that throughout his post-college football career.
Yeah, he was, very giving of his time, and I know one of the articles spoke to the fact that he was back at Forest Hills Northern this spring speaking with kids, and he was a giver, and Coach D tries to instill that in kids down there, and be a light, and Mike was certainly that, and continued to be even after his his playing days at Michigan State.
There have been all kinds of tweets that have gone out from former players, people who have been touched by the life of Mike Sadler. One that comes to mind was Connor Cook, who immediately tweeted out, "Safe to say you were the funniest dude I've ever met. It was nearly impossible to have a conversation with you and not laugh at some point," and every other Spartan would say the same. "I've hurt for you, your family, and for anyone who's gotten to know you throughout your life, because you were truly a special guy. You've impacted me over the last couple of years getting to know you, and I truly appreciate our friendship." If you have a story like Connor Cook, or it might not happen to be one from Michigan State University, it might be from Forest Hills Northern, you certainly can share it with us today, and we'd love to have you on the Miller Lite hotline at 866-838-HUGE. That's 866-838-4843. Also, we don't want to have anyone get lost in this, and obviously that is the young man who is also in the car, Nebraska punter Sam Foltz, died in the crash as well, and he probably looked up to Mike as some sort of a mentor here, and that's got to be tough. You're taking two punters who are participating in drills and camps and talking about what it takes to do the job, and then to have their lives, the two of them, so sadly ended. Yeah,
it's one of those things. Mike was a couple years older than Sam, and I know just from going through the process myself. You looked up to the guys that are a couple years older, even if they're on other teams. The kind of level of player they are. But as Sam got to know Mike, I'm sure, like everybody else, you're caught up by his personality and his bigger than life persona. But he just was a guy, and as you read about Sam on Twitter too, obviously was well loved in Nebraska circles, and seems like a really good kid, and as Mike was as well. But Mike had just that engaging personality, and you mentioned Connor's tweet, and I know William Golston tweeted a similar thing, current Tampa Bay Buck, but just said he never had a conversation where he wasn't laughing, by the end of it.
Sure.
And, he was just witty, and a lot of people knew him personally, but through social media, a lot of people knew him through his Twitter takes and whatnot, and his tweets. And he was a funny guy, man, and that's who he was. Though it wasn't like it was an act for Twitter. He just was very witty and just a great sense of humor. Didn't take himself too seriously.
Foltz, by the way, was a 3-year starter for the Nebraska team, and last year he was named the Big Ten's Punter of the Year. He graduated from Nebraska with a degree in May, and then led the Big Ten in punting last year with a 44.2 yards per kick, ranked 5th in school history at 42.6 yards per kick. And this young man was scheduled to complete his senior year. And boy, you take a look at a leader like that for the Nebraska football team. We know what it feels like here for someone who's near and dear to us in the greater Grand Rapids area of Forest Hills Northern, and then obviously going on to Michigan State. But that Nebraska football team's got to be hurting right now.
Oh, no question. And that's tough. I mean, a lot of these kids haven't experienced loss, and not that it ever gets easier, for sure. But yeah, that's especially this close to starting camp. I mean, they're a week out from heading to camp, and it's not going to be as it should have been. And that's tough. But hopefully they can rally around that. The reality of it is athletics seem so small now. That's as you're reading the statistics, and
yeah,
it just doesn't matter.
It's kind of white noise at this point.
Yeah, it's a nice fun thing about life and all that, but at the end of the day, nobody's going to remember what your punting average was. They're going to remember you as a human being, and both these guys are very highly thought of and will be missed and loved forever.
Yeah, the guys who went down to the punting camp, the players were serving as staff at the Coles National Invitational Scholarship Camp. That was for high school kickers and punters at a high school in the town of Wales. And so they're there, and you see they're just trying to give back and show what they, teach everyone what they have learned over time and give them the fundamentals, get a little workout probably themselves at the same time, but having fun giving that knowledge and sharing that wealth of knowledge they have with all the youngsters.
Yeah, I mean, they've all been poured into, as they were growing up, and it's always fun to give back and be that mentor, that leader for the younger guys, and that's what they were doing. They doing what they loved, and it's what we all should do. I mean, I said this on the local show earlier today, but it challenges you. Even while Mike was alive, he was one of those guys. You looked at what he had going on in life, and you're like, what do I do with all my hours? Here's a kid that's got 2 degrees that it takes most people to get 1 degree, and he's on his way to Stanford Law School, and he's doing all this on the athletic fields. And we all like to make a lot of excuses in life. When you look at a guy like that, it's like, okay, he's busting his hump every single day to make this happen. It challenges you, and then above and beyond that, the impact he had on people. Aside from all that, all the stuff he had going on his own life, he made an impact on so many people, and it's challenging because he had nice punting statistics, and he was always the first to trumpet his yards per carry, but that really doesn't matter now. It's what did he leave behind, and what he left was an indelible impression on a lot of lives, and we should all be challenged to do the same.
What's interesting in being a father of 20-some-year-olds myself, I have a mutual friend on Facebook who was writing yesterday about her relationship, I guess it was, with Mike, and they were friends. And you talk about a 24-year-old kid who liked to laugh and have fun and loved to eat ice cream and things like that, and that just kind of hit you right in the stomach, because then you think like, okay, you watch them on TV, you think of almost like the superhero status or people you look up to, you root for that team, but you realize when they take that helmet off and they take the pads off, they're a few years removed from being the kid that forgot to take the garbage out and didn't pick up their room and everything else, and it just kind of hits home to you how young that man really was.
Yeah, it is. It's he's a kid. He had a full life ahead of him. That's what makes it so tragic. I mean, we're all going to go, and I'm a man of faith, and I believe I know where he is, and but that doesn't make our pain any less. And it's just tough when it's taken, just ripped from you like that. And but again, I mean, you can make a positive out of it by challenging ourselves to make an impact on others. And it doesn't matter how much stuff you have or how much money you have or what your statistics were, what did you leave with other people? And that's what this whole thing is, challenged me. I had to drive back from my cottage this morning, and that's kind of was on my mind the whole time, is what can we do to make a difference in other people's lives.
The voice you're hearing is that of Mitch Lyons, the former Spartan and also a Forest Hills Northern grad. We're talking about the life of Mike Sadler today, the former Michigan State punter who died in a car crash. And our Montel Construction Huge Question of the Day will not be a question today. It will be an opportunity for you to call us at 866-838-HUGE and tell us any stories that you have about Mike Sadler, either from his high school days at Forest Hills Northern or his days at Michigan State University, or even his days following his playing days with the Spartans. Joe Jason and for Bill Simonson, more on the life of Mike Sadler after this.
Michael Robert Sadler with high honor. bang one here. He'll take the snap at his 10-yard line. Oh, he'll run it. He runs to his right. He's at the 25 and the 30. He's still with it out at the 40-yard line. Out of bounds with a first down and change at the 49-yard line.
Somebody would ask me, how much time I spent in the weight room this past offseason, because I think the pipes are looking pretty good. I got some little worms just crawling around in there. No, not really. I'm lucky enough to have some fun questions we asked me, and I like to have fun with it.
Mike Sadler with his 5th punt of the ball game. Riley McCarron deep for Iowa. Oh, it's a fake. Mike Sadler running to his right. He's got some green grass in front of him. He's into Iowa territory, and he's out of bounds across the way with a first down and then some, folks. Nico Law knocked him out of bounds. Mike Sadler continues to do great things for the Spartans.
Now that my career here is coming to a close, I've had a lot of time to kind of look back and reflect on everything that I've done. And I've been very fortunate in my time here at Michigan State to have lots of success, both as a team and as an individual. I think winning the 2014 Rose Bowl is probably the highlight of my time here, something that hasn't been done in decades at Michigan State. Individually, I've also had a very good career. I've been an All-American both on and off the field. And really the academic awards mean more to me than anything, just because those are going to be with me for my whole life. We understand that our athletic careers are fleeting and they're not going to last forever. But what we do in the classroom and what we will learn while we're here is really going to be with us for a lifetime.
You're listening to the Mike Sadler Tribute Show on the Huge Radio Network. Help honor the legacy of Mike by visiting michaelsadlerfoundation.com. That's michaelsadlerfoundation.com. We now continue with the Mike Sadler Tribute Show on the Huge Radio Network.
Welcome back to the Huge Show, all across the Huge Radio Network, broadcasting live from the Auto Value Bumper to Bumper Parts Store studios. Joe Jason in for Bill Simonson today. Mitch Lyons is joining us in studio as well, the former Spartan and Forest Hills Northern grad. The sad news that came across, really kind of the focal point of our entire show today, will be former Michigan State punter Mike Sadler, who tragically died in a car crash when his car lost control on wet pavement and left the roadway and struck a tree. He was pronounced dead at the scene. Nebraska punter Sam Foltz also died in the crash. He was expected to be one of the leaders on special teams for Nebraska this year, a senior. And also LSU kicker Colby Delahousse was transported to the hospital with injuries. And they were all attending a weekend punting camp. It was the Coles National Invitational Scholarship Camp for high school kickers and punters at Kettle Moraine High School in the town of Wales. That was in Wisconsin. And just so you know, Sheriff's Department Public Information Officer said drugs or alcohol do not appear to be a factor. The accident does remain under investigation, but there was some rain and heavy storms that came through the Wisconsin area. And by all early reports, the indication was that the roads were wet when you have that black ice. And then, of course, you get a little speed involved with that, and you lose control of the car. And next thing you know, tragedy strikes. Spartan head coach Mark D'Antonio paid tribute on his Twitter feed and said that he was shocked and saddened in a statement released by the Spartans. And Mitch, you said, fortunately for you, you'd never really kind of faced this with any kind of a teammate through all the years that you played sports.
No, I didn't. I've had former teammates pass away, years later, but not in the moment, not when you're on the team. Fortunately, I never had that happen.
Our MontelConstruction.com huge question of the day usually centers around various topics, and we get your reaction to any of those topics. But today, in light of the sad news about Mike Sadler, if you knew him, maybe you want to share a story about him, you can give us a call on the Miller Lite hotline at 866-838-HUGE. That's 866-838-4843. We're moments away from Drew Neitzel, who will join us on the Metro Health Medicine guest line, where all of our Huge Show guests appear. Mitch Lyons with us in the studio, the Forest Hills Northern grad. And we didn't even talk about how this kind of sent shockwaves through the high school, but here's a guy who was well known in his high school. Jared Valdir, another guy from Forest Hills Northern who winds up in the NFL, and I'm sure there were a lot of young players, high school players and the like, who knew him growing up in the same community, and to find out this news had to be not only a shock to the whole Spartan family, but also to the Forest Hills Northern family.
Oh, for sure. I mean, he's not that far removed. He's 24 years old, so 6 years ago, he's just finishing up high school. So, I'm sure was a role model to a lot of young kids in the Forest Hills area, and then certainly went on to watch him play at Michigan State and have a lot of success there. So yeah, it's a painful loss for that community, and beyond that, even in West Michigan, just because I know he worked out at Jared Valdir's gym and whatnot. I remember seeing pictures of he and Kenny Willikis, who's a player down at Michigan State now. So he was involved with other kids from the area, and so it's a tough one, and a lot of people are missing him.
All of our guests do appear on the Metro Health Medicine guest line, and joining us right now across the huge radio network is Drew Neitzel, the former Michigan State University guard. Drew, it's Joe Jason sitting in for Bill Simonson today. Normally we are talking to you about basketball, but the sad news today has brought you onto the show. This is not what we anticipated, but give us your initial thoughts when you heard the news about Mike Sadler.
I was in complete shock, and I still am. Just a tragic thing that happened, not only with him, but everyone involved, with all the families involved with the situation. But, I had a chance to meet Mike back when he was being recruited, or a recruit for Michigan State. I was still there, met him on the sidelines before a football game, and I'm sure Mitch can attest to this. Spartans that come out of Grand Rapids, there's always kind of a special bond there, no matter what the sport is. So I had followed Mike's high school career, his prestigious high school career, and then obviously followed him closely at Michigan State. And you always, obviously root hard for Michigan State, but you root especially hard for the West Michigan, Grand Rapids Spartans. And, he had a wonderful high school career, college career, and I really started to get closer to Mike when he moved back to Grand Rapids after his playing days were over, and was trying to figure out what the next chapter in life was, whether it was lunch or, chatting with him at different Michigan State events, trying to figure out what was next. And he was super excited, headed out to the West Coast for that next chapter. So it's just tragic event, and, my thoughts and prayers are with his family and friends.
Drew, Mitch here. Obviously tough loss for everybody, and one thing that I'd like to do today is just try to celebrate Mike's life, and if you could, he certainly was a funny guy, and maybe what are some a moment or two that maybe put a smile on your face that you can share with the listeners.
Well, he just attracted people. I mean, his personality. I mean, you look just at his social media following. People maybe didn't really know him personally, but they felt like they knew him just through the way he interacted with the fans and media. I remember just recently at the last one of the Spartan tailgates here in Grand Rapids, Spartan Winter Tailgates, where he spoke and was given an award, and just the interaction he had when he walked into the room. He was taking selfies with fans, and just an energetic guy. He was always happy and always joking. As most of his teammates have made comments over the last couple of days about the impact that he's had on his life. And like I said, I had just really started to get to know him a little better over the last year and a half. And, it's tough, but he definitely had a huge impact on the community, not only Forest Hills Northern, but Michigan State and people across the country.
Yeah, Drew, what would you say? I mean, it's always tough, but what do you take from this? Seeing a young guy like this, full of promise, that made such an impact on other people's lives. What do we take from this to move forward and try to honor Mike?
Well, I think his legacy is gonna live on forever. I mean, you already see the impact, through the football program and the Michigan State community. But he's just such a great guy, and not only a great athlete, but student and person. The world lost a special person, a very talented person, and but his legacy will definitely live on through the Michigan State community.
Drew, has there been any other time that you can remember that you knew of somebody who was so close to or at least so close, maybe just slightly removed from the Michigan State family, or even a high school team that this has ever happened in your life, or is this the first time?
Not to my knowledge. I haven't experienced anything like this or this close. I mean, and obviously I didn't play with Mike or at Michigan State, but obviously, like I said, there's a connection with West Michigan Spartans and athletes that play their high school ball in Grand Rapids and move on to Michigan State. A close bond there, no matter what the sport is. So it's tough, and but I think prayers and thoughts need to be given to his family that are going through this difficult time, and as well as the others that were involved in the accident.
We're talking with Drew Neitzel, former Michigan State University guard, and we're talking about the tragic death of Michigan State punter Mike Sadler, who died in a car crash. Drew, if you can, give us a snapshot into, not necessarily with Mike's situation, but maybe the relationship that basketball players and football players have with one another on campus, because that might shed some light onto how the entire Spartan Nation is hurting right now. You guys are obviously in great support of one another, but how often do you see some of the other teammates or some of the other Spartans from some of the other major sports at the university? Yeah,
we would see those guys on a regular basis throughout the day. Whether it was having some of the same classes, whether we were at the Clarabelle Smith Center going through tutoring or study hall sessions, whether we were in the training room. At the Duff, getting treatment, and football, basketball, hockey players. I mean, all the athletes were in there. Whether we were in the weight room working out, and we would work out at the same time as the football team, and sometimes even work out with the football players. So I mean, it's a close group. Everybody kind of knew everybody, and so I think all of Spartan Nation, especially the former players, are all feeling it right now.
Yeah, that's a good point, Drew. I think back, and I think part of what draws us all together is at the end of the day, we're athletes and we're focused on our sport, but we're all fans too. And for me, I grew up a Michigan State fan, and I think you did the same. But when you go down there, and for me, the guys on the basketball team, I liked hoops, so I gravitated to those guys and got to know them, and I would assume it's true vice versa for you guys as well. And so, hey, just hang in there, brother, and let's just keep pulling together, and it's gonna get better over time, but definitely a tough one, and prayers up for Mike's family for sure.
Yeah, definitely. So appreciate you guys having me on, and thoughts and prayers are with Mike's family and friends, and hopefully everybody can get through it. But Mike's legacy will definitely live on through Spartan Nation.
Thanks, Drew. Drew Neitzel with us, the former Michigan State University guard, joining us on the Metro Health Medicine guest line, where all of our guests appear. It was interesting, Mitch, what Drew was talking about how the football and basketball team, they see each other, whether it's working out or in classes together. And then there's the other part of it, too, where the football players, how they get along, kickers and punters are always kind of given the business by the rest of the guys in the football team. It seems, though, that Mike Sadler found a way to maybe deal with that, and that was through his humor, obviously a little self-deprecating humor at times too, which probably took the edge off, and especially when you've got what the young man had between his ears, where he's a little bit ahead of the curve when it comes to academics. He probably could handle himself against some of the bigger guys there on the football team.
You raise a good point. I'm glad you did, because I was thinking of that earlier, because a lot of time there's a little bit of resentment almost on the part of as we say, the real football players, because the kickers come out and do their little little 15-minute stretch session and, maybe kick a few balls and during special teams. But the other part of the day, they're just kind of hanging out there, hobnobbing and sharing stories. And, to Mike's credit, he sharpened his witticisms quite well over there. But, he had the ability to disarm the big lugheads, maybe had the physical stature on him with his wit. And, those kickers and punters and long snappers are a close-knit bunch as well. And I know those guys are hurting especially because they do spend so much time and have a lot of downtime and, even more so have time to get to know each other at a deeper and more personal level. And, I've seen some of the tweets from Tabor Pepper and, who's a long snapper for 3 years with Mike, and, Michael Geiger and Jake Hartberger, who, took the punting duties after Mike left. And I saw a retweet of one of Mike's tweets from before last year when Jake was just getting ready to start his career. He had redshirted his first year, Mike's senior year. And Mike said, well, 3 days until Jake Hartberger gets to try to, top my 4 years of 18 yards per carry, because he's very proud of his fake punts. And I think it was even quite higher. And I think his last fake punt of his career, I think, cut his average down. So I probably didn't sit well with him. But just was a funny kid. And, if you go back, I was just sharing with you there at the break, somebody put together a compilation of all his funniest tweets. But, I had I have a tendency to be sarcastic at times too, and Mike always threatened me a little bit because I knew he was witty, so I knew I had to be careful what I said. But I had a little bit of a tweet here a year and a half ago or so. It was just kind of a funny thing where Jay Harbaugh, coach at Michigan, tweeted out, asked anybody if anybody knew if it was legal to own a Wolverine in Michigan, and I, without missing a beat, said, "Ask Coach D." Well, I knew that was going to blow up when I saw Mike comment on that and said, "This wins Twitter for tonight," and dropped the mic. And it kind of blew up from there, primarily because Mike's got a lot of followers, so it kind of took off and blew up from there. But, it was, he had a ton of that stuff. I think back on, his relationship with Faux Pelini, the parody account of Bo Pelini at Nebraska at the time, and just some of the things back and forth between the two of them, and then Mike telling him, that he would, in honor of him, he would, pet the cat that Bo Pelini is holding in his Twitter, on Faux Pelini's Twitter page. He's holding his cat, and then Mike, nails a punt against Nebraska and comes off on the sideline petting the fake imaginary cat. And just, who does that, right? I mean, it's one thing to say it, to actually do it and get it picked up on TV and have the announcers talking about it is just incredible.
I think the guy's mental Rolodex was ahead of the curve as well, not only his academics.
Yeah.
Mitch Lyons is with us in the studio. Joe Jason and for Bill Simonson. We are celebrating the life of Mike Sadler, the former Michigan State punter who died in a very tragic car accident. And we will talk more about the life of Mike Sadler in just a moment. Joe Jason for Bill Simonson, back with more on the Huge Radio Network.
Michael Robert Sadler with high honor.
Mike Sadler under pressure to bang one here. He'll take the snap at his 10-yard line. Oh, he'll run it. He runs to his right. He's at the 25 and the 30. He's still with it out at the 40-yard line. Out of bounds with a first down and change at the 49-yard line.
Somebody would ask me, how much time I spent in the weight room this past offseason, because I think the pipes are looking pretty good. I got some little worms just crawling around in there. No, not really. I'm lucky enough to have some fun questions be asked to me, and I like to have fun with it.
Mike Sadler with his fifth punt of the ball game. Riley McCarron deep for Iowa. Oh, it's a fake. Mike Sadler running to his right. He's got some green grass in front of him. He's into Iowa territory, and he's out of bounds across the way with a first down and then some, folks. Nico Law knocked him out of bounds. Mike Sadler continues to do great things for the Spartans.
Now that my career here is coming to a close, I've had a lot of time to kind of look back and reflect on everything that I've done. And I've been very fortunate in my time here at Michigan State to have lots of success, both as a team and as an individual. I think winning the 2014 Rose Bowl is probably the highlight of my time here, something that hasn't been done in decades at Michigan State. Individually, I've also had a very good career. I've been an All-American both on and off the field. And really the academic awards mean more to me than anything, just because those are going to be with me for my whole life. We understand that our athletic careers are fleeting and they're not going to last forever. But what we do in the classroom and what we will learn while we're here is really going to be with us for a lifetime.
You're listening to the Mike Sadler Tribute Show on the Huge Radio Network. Help honor the legacy of Mike by visiting michaelsadlerfoundation.com. That's michaelsadlerfoundation.com. We now continue with the Mike Sadler Tribute Show on the Huge Radio Network.
All across the state of Michigan on the Huge Radio Network on great stations like AM 1280 in Alma, Mount Pleasant, AM 1330 in Flint, AM 1450 in Holland, AM 1050 in Ann Arbor, AM 930 in Battle Creek, and 93.7 FM in Cadillac. Joe Jason in for Bill Simonson on The Huge Show. In studio with us is Mitch Lyons, the former Spartan, and, well, you're always a Spartan, I guess. You're never a former Spartan. Is that
Spartan
correct?
for life.
Spartan for life. And also a Forest Hills Northern graduate. And he is in studio today because former Michigan State punter Mike Sadler, a local to the people in the greater Grand Rapids area, Forest Hills Northern graduate, and, of course, near and dear to many people in our flagship station, 107.3 WBBL-FM Grand Rapids. He was killed in a car accident in Wisconsin, the 24-year-old, involved in a single-car crash with two other passengers. One of the other passengers, Nebraska punter Sam Foltz, also died in the crash. He was expected to be a leader on special teams, a senior. I think 2 years in a row he had led the Big Ten in punting and was scheduled for all set for his senior year. He, along with LSU kicker Colby Delahousse, who was transported to the hospital with injuries and has now been released. There were some reports that actually Delahousse met with some family members of the other two kickers, I guess.
Yeah, I'd read an article that he wanted to meet with the Foltz family and the Sadler family. So I guess that happened today, and it sounded like he's going to be okay, thankfully. Yeah. But just some burn, not just, but second-degree burns on his legs and a cut on his head, from what I read.
Spartan coach Mark D'Antonio paid tribute on his Twitter feed almost immediately after the news was released, shocked and saddened in a statement released by Michigan State. Michigan State Athletic Director Mark Hollis said the loss of Sadler and Foltz marked a sad day for Michigan State, Nebraska, and all of college football. Mark Hollis had to deal with this kind of on two levels, if you will. Not only the former Michigan State player, but obviously having the kicker in the car who was a Big Ten, player as well in that car. So for Hollis, it's probably been a pretty tough 48 hours for the athletic director at Michigan State.
It is, and I think he expressed in an article I read, and I know from experience, he considered Mike a friend. He's not just a student at the school and an athlete, but he was a friend, and because he was to anybody that encountered him, and certainly Mark Hollis spent a lot of time with him throughout the course of his career there, and so I'm sure it's still very raw for Mark and Coach D as well. And I know it's going to be pretty fresh and raw for them as well.
Police said the vehicle was traveling westbound on Beaver Lake Road in Merton, lost control on wet pavement, left the road, struck a tree. They say that maybe some speed, but didn't look like drugs or alcohol were involved in the incident. And the sad news is that a 24-year-old and a 21-year-old lost their lives. And for parents who have kids of not only young age, teenage, 20-something, that's tough when you look at you feel for the family at Michigan State, you feel for the Forest Hills Northern family, but boy, oh boy, parents that have to say goodbye to their kids before it's their time, that's probably the toughest of all.
It's your worst nightmare. I'm a father of 6, and I can't imagine what these families are going through right now. And so you just, you hope they have a strong faith and they can just draw strength from that and know that their kids are in a better place. But it's just, you still have the pain of them. They're not here with you. And it's a sad day for everybody.
The 4-time academic All-American, earning notice around the college football world for his humor, on social media. After completing his master's degree in the spring of 2015, he announced earlier this year he planned to attend Stanford Law School this fall. Those plans come to an abrupt end. The sad news: Mike Sadler, former Michigan State punter, former Husky at Forest Hills Northern, has died in a car crash. Joe Jason in for Bill Simonson. Mitch Lyons is here. This is the Huge Radio Network.
You're listening to the Mike Sadler Tribute Show on the Huge Radio Network. Help honor the legacy of Mike by visiting michaelsadlerfoundation.com. That's michaelsadlerfoundation.com. 2 years ago today, former Grand Rapids, Forest Hills Northern, and Michigan State punter Mike Sadler unexpectedly passed away in a car accident in Wisconsin. To honor his legacy, the Huge Radio Network will replay the Mike Sadler Tribute Show we originally aired on July 25th, 2016, to celebrate the life of Mike Sadler on and off the field.
Joe Jason in for Bill Simonson all across the Huge Radio Network. Mitch Lyons is in the studio with us today. And the reason why Mitch is here is because we're talking about the tragic car accident and that claimed the life of former Michigan State punter Mike Sadler, who's not only a Spartan for life, a former Spartan football player, also a Forest Hills Northern graduate, as is Mitch. And kind of really nothing prepares you for this kind of news when it happens to your football family. Obviously, Mike's got a lot of former players that are reaching out, former coaches, athletic directors. We'll hear from Mark D'Antonio in just a little bit, the head football coach at Michigan State, and athletic director Mark Hollis, all coming up within the next 20, 25 minutes or so. But this is something that you just can't ever wrap your mind around. Like, why do these kinds of things happen, Mitch?
Yeah, like I said to you during the break, I mean, these happen every day. I mean, you can open up the paper and somebody's losing a child somewhere, but when it happens within your circle, I mean, it smacks you and it hits you hard in the gut. And got a call from a buddy of mine, offensive line coach Mark Staten from MSU, and I answered. I think I said, "To what do I owe this great pleasure?" And he just said, "Not good," and told me what happened, and it was the farthest thing from a pleasure, that's for sure, and just really sucked the wind out of me, and continues to. You kind of move on with your day and try to focus on other things, and then all of a sudden it'll just hit me that here's a young guy that had so much promise, so much life ahead of him, and just in the blink of an eye, it's gone.
Our MontelConstruction.com huge question of the day usually leads to one of various topics that we have here on the Huge Show. But today, in light of the terrible news about Mike Sadler, if you knew him, maybe share a story about him and his humor, you can reach out to us at 866-838-HUGE. That's 866-838-4843. All of our guests appear courtesy of the Metro Health Medicine guest line. And joining us is Mark D'Antonio, the head football coach of Michigan State University. Coach, it's Joe Jason sitting in for Bill Simonson today. Thanks for being with us, first of all, in light of this tragedy. First of all, Coach, your thoughts about your former punter, Mike Sadler.
Mike was not only a gifted athlete, but, he's a gifted student as well, and involved in the community. And, I always talk about just trying to make other people around him better and, being a light for people. And he was certainly that. We're going to miss him very, very, very much. Shocking.
Coach, Mitch Lyons here, and again, thanks for being on the show. I know it's still raw for you as for everybody, and it's tough. But trying to put in perspective what Mike meant to the program. I mean, every starter is important, and everybody's has value to the team. But what did he bring to the team beyond what your average punter brings to the team?
Well, he was first of all, he came there, and in the 2010 recruiting class, so he redshirted his freshman year behind Aaron Bates, and I can still remember when he committed to us. I was actually on my way back from the Big Ten Media Days, so he solidified that position for us as an athlete, as a football player. But he went so much beyond that. He was our holder. We had a lot of different fakes for him. He was a guy that made everybody feel good about themselves on a daily basis. Really, I mean, he touched so many different people on our football team, all aspects of people, and just had that ability to make people feel comfortable, make them laugh, bring a smile to their face, and very intelligent guy. He came to Michigan State with 46, I think it was 36 advanced placement hours, and was a 3.977 student, all set to go to Stanford Law School, and then this happened. So it is tragic.
Yeah, I know he had tweeted out a picture of a note you had written to him after he committed, and just said, your postscript was you will punt in the Rose Bowl, and you certainly predicted that correctly, as Mike played a big role in that 2013 season, and ultimately the Rose Bowl win over Stanford, where, like you mentioned, he was ironically going to law school this fall. Trying to keep this thing a little bit lighter, because Mike brought so much light to everyone's life, and I know you had a firsthand exposure to him on a daily basis, but what are some of the things that stick out to you, Coach, that just bring a smile to your face in terms of some of the crazy antics and things he'd say or do?
He was the age of our daughters, and so our girls sort of grew up with him a little bit. And, Kristen showed me a video yesterday of him, just walking down the lobby, and she said, "Here's our punter," and he turned around and he executed a punt. A punt on air, I guess I'd say, and a big smile on his face. And, he's just one of those guys that just pulled it out of nowhere, really. He was so spontaneous, with everything that he did. So he really, I really can't, sort of numb by all this, but I really can't think of too many things other than every time I sat down and talked with him, which was often, he had a good perspective on things, first of all, and then he also pretty candid about things, very candid about things, but very confident. For all the antics that he pulled, he was a very, very good football player, and really made a difference on our team in so many different ways.
Well, he certainly, thought of himself as a running back too. Given your crazy plays, you'd come up with him, come up for him, and your well-coined nicknames and whatnot for the fake punts. And he certainly took full advantage of that. And I know he was proud of his 18-yard per carry average. And it's just it's a tough one, and we really appreciate you coming on, and we just are grateful for you taking the time to share some thoughts during a very difficult time. So thanks a lot for that, Coach.
Thanks, Mitch. Our thoughts and our prayers go out to everybody in his immediate family and all the people that he touched. And the world really will be a little lonelier, a little sadder place because Mike Sadler is gone. He touched so many of us, not just for his time as a football player, but in this time in his life, and he was all about life, and I know that right now he would want us to move forward.
Coach, one more thing I wanted to ask you about. This was kind of a double loss for you because not only you lost someone from the Michigan State family, but you lost someone in the Big Ten family too, with Sam Foltz being gone. And I know that the last time you saw that young man on the field was back on November 7th of last year. But do you have any memories of Sam or anything, especially with his relationship with Mike? Did you know Sam off the field at all or get a chance to talk to him?
No, I only knew Sam as a football player. I mean, this is college football is a, we compete against each other, but it's a family as well. So our hearts go out to the Nebraska fans and most importantly, their family. So, just have to endure right now.
Well, keep your chin up, Coach, and keep the faith, and we'll look forward to talking to you about less important things down the road, like winning football games. But we really appreciate you taking the time today.
All right. Well, Mike, you want me to tell everybody out there still go green?
Go white.
Okay. All right. Thanks for having us on.
You bet. Head coach of the University, or of Michigan State University, and that is Mark D'Antonio, joining us on the Metro Health Medicine guest line, talking about a tough subject, losing one of his own, because the coach-player relationship is pretty special, is it not?
Yeah, it really is, and Coach, recruited him for, a couple of years, I'm sure, before Mike was even out of high school. So, he came to campus in 2009. So the coach has been dealing with him, I'm sure, since 2007, if not earlier. And, he was a big signing when we got him because, Aaron Bates had a stellar career, and we knew we had one more year with Aaron, and we needed a guy to pencil in there for the next 4 years, and he was able to do that, and it never really questioned his punting ability. He never really went through a stretch. Sometimes kickers can get messed up in the head, and they have a stretch where they're maybe not punting as well, but Mike was so consistent and just so solid his whole career, and able to do a lot of things, like Coach said. I mean, being a holder, a lot of people take that for granted, but he had a good hold, and his last play, I guess, would be the field goal to win it against Baylor in the Cotton Bowl 2 years ago, and snap was a little low, and he picked it clean and got it down for Michael Geiger, and we win that game. But it's I know the coach is impacted greatly by this, and it's a tough one for him, for sure.
I know a lot of times the head coach will be sometimes a step or a distance away or a layer away from a position player like a punter or maybe a kicker, and there are assistant coaches that handle that kind of thing too. What do you think the feeling is right now with some of the assistant coaches who dealt with Mike on a day-to-day basis? Right.
What you're saying is true, and that's kind of what I experienced as I went through there. I mean, Coach Pearls was kind of he was kind of the Wizard of Oz behind the curtain, and he dealt more with your coaches, your position coaches. But Coach D's got a little different. In a while there, spend more time in the meeting rooms. I don't know. There just seems to be he's closer and a little bit different way of doing things than maybe a lot of coaches. It's a family atmosphere. He really creates that. He has, linebacker coaches meet with O-linemen and running backs and black, white, and whatever, and create these little mentor groups. So it is really a lot much more close-knit family than maybe a lot of places, because a lot of places it's almost two teams. There's the defense and the offense, and you don't interrelate as much other than on the practice field. That's part of the cultural thing that Coach D changed, and so guys are tight with one another. It's a tighter team than one it was when I was there.
And don't you find, too, that players like Mike Sadler, who tend to be sometime larger than life with their humor and have a few things to say, they tend to have more players gravitate to them, or they're not the guy who's afraid to stand up maybe in a team meeting or say something or have a little joke to say that maybe the coach would notice them a little bit more than they would notice, say, that somebody, that third or fourth person on the depth chart.
Yeah, I mean, a guy like that, like Mike, who I believe was the Oil Can Award winner once, if not twice, as far as being the team humorist. That's an award that's given out annually. You certainly can bring some levity to a situation, maybe when you're going through a tough practice or a tough stretch for whatever reason. He can be a guy that can lighten the mood and maybe take one for the team because the coach respects him, because he is the kind of kid he is, and he can say something at the right time. And, Mike had that kind of personality as well.
Also, we should tell you that coming up later in the show, Travis Jackson, the former Michigan State Spartan football player, close friend of Mike Sadler, will join us. Forest Hills Northern principal John Gregory is scheduled to join us also. We've had Mark D'Antonio talk with us. Mark Hollis, the Michigan State University athletic director, is scheduled to join us sometime within the next 10 or 15 minutes or so as well, if we can get to him.
Yeah, for sure. And, Mark Hollis was tight with Mike, which I'm sure he'll share, but had a relationship beyond just being the your typical athletic director and student athlete. So I know he's hurting.
We have someone who's joining us on the Miller Lite Hotline to join us on the Huge Show today. We're talking about Mike Sadler, the former Michigan State punter who tragically died in a car accident. Joining us on the Miller Lite Hotline from Mount Pleasant is John. John, we welcome you to the Huge Show. Thanks for joining us.
Hey, fellas, how you doing? I just had a quick comment on the day's topic. I'm a CMU grad and fan and a U of M fan, but I just had to say real quick, we're all on the same team today, and go green today, and RIP to that young man.
Very good. Thank you, John. We really appreciate the comment there. And I think that's kind of the way everyone's feeling right now, not only in Michigan State Spartan land, but also across the Big Ten. It was a tough loss to take for everyone today.
Yeah, absolutely. And, we have a lot of fun with the rivalries and whatnot, but it's a game. And I think people recognize that when something like this happens and it smacks you in the face in a hurry, that there's more important things than football scores or basketball scores or whatever athletic endeavor it might be.
Just around the corner, Mark Hollis, the athletic director at Michigan State, will join us on the Metro Health Medicine guest line. Mitch Lyons is in the studio, Joe Jason in for Bill Simonson, and you're listening to The Huge Show all across the Huge Radio Network.
Michael Robert Sadler with high honor.
Sadler under pressure to bang one here. He'll take the snap. at his 10-yard line. Oh, he'll run it. He runs to his right. He's at the 25 and the 30. He's still with it out at the 40-yard line. Out of bounds with a first down and change at the 49-yard line.
Somebody would ask me, how much time I spent in the weight room this past offseason, because I think the pipes are looking pretty good. I got some little worms just crawling around in there. No, not really. I'm lucky enough to have some fun questions be asked to me, and I like to have fun with it.
Mike Sadler with his 5th punt of the ball game. Riley McCarron deep for Iowa. Oh, it's a fake. Mike Sadler running to his right. He's got some green grass in front of him. He's into Iowa territory, and he's out of bounds across the way with a first down and then some, folks. Nico Law knocked him out of bounds. Mike Sadler continues to do great things for the Spartans.
Now that my career here is coming to a close, I've had a lot of time to kind of look back and reflect on everything that I've done. And I've been very fortunate in my time here at Michigan State to have lots of success, both as a team and as an individual. I think winning the 2014 Rose Bowl is probably the highlight of my time here, something that hasn't been done in decades at Michigan State. Individually, I've also had a very good career. I've been an All-American both on and off the field. And really the academic awards mean more to me than anything, just because those are going to be with me for my whole life. We understand that our athletic careers are fleeting and they're not going to last forever. But what we do in the classroom and what we will learn while we're here is really going to be with us for a lifetime.
You're listening to the Mike Sadler Tribute Show on the Huge Radio Network. Help honor the legacy of Mike by visiting michaelsadlerfoundation.com. That's michaelsadlerfoundation.com. We now continue with the Mike Sadler Tribute Show on the Huge Radio Network.
We welcome you back to the Huge Show. All across the Huge Radio Network. Joe Jason in for Bill Simonson. Mitch Lyons is with us in studio. The former Forest Hills Northern graduate and also a Spartan for life from Michigan State. And the reason why he's here is because we had everything kind of just tossed out the window with the news where a car that was driven by Michigan State punter Mike Sadler, along with 2 others in the car, veered off the road and hit a tree. And Sadler lost his life, as did Nebraska punter Sam Foltz. LSU kicker Colby Delahousse was transported to a hospital with injuries. They were all attending a weekend punting camp that was taking place at the Cole. I think it was called the Cole National Invitational Scholarship Camp for high school kickers and punters at the Kettle Moraine High School in the town of Wales. And tragic ending to that trip. I know when you lose someone in your life, you kind of, being someone who's had that happen more than once in my life, you kind of look around when that happened, and you look around and say, how can these people still be driving around and going through the drive-thru and grabbing McDonald's and laughing on the street when my heart is breaking at this time? It almost doesn't make sense. Yeah, time marches on, and that's the thing. I mean, this world doesn't stop, but you certainly have to grieve, but you do have to knock the dust off and get back in the saddle and keep living. And that's, Mike wouldn't want anything less than that for any of us. And if anything, he'd want us to, take some of the good things people are saying about him and turn them around and, utilize those same gifts he put on people and give the same thing to others and make an impression on other people's lives. Well, all of our guests appear courtesy of the Metro Health Medicine guest line, and let's go to our guest line right now. Joining us is Mark Hollis, the athletic director at Michigan State, who joins us across the Huge Radio Network. Mark, Joe Jason in for Bill Simonson, thank you so much under these trying circumstances for joining us today to talk about Mike Sadler. We really appreciate it.
Well, thank you so much. It's very sad, obviously, very sad situation that we're dealing with. Mike was an individual that I was very close with, and it's, the outpouring of support from all the Big Ten institutions and across the country has been quite amazing, both for Mike's family as well as those at Michigan State that are struggling through this process.
Yeah, Sam Foltz also part of the Big Ten family as well, so it's kind of a double loss on your point. Kind of take us through Friday and the weekend, if you will, and maybe we can put a silver lining on this dark cloud if we can come up with some, maybe you can share with us some stories about Mike and his humorous side, but kind of take us through when you found out the news. Take us through those moments, if you will.
Well, Coach D'Antonio got the word first, and he is the individual that informed me, and it was, Mike's the kind of guy you think you're the only one, but he had this impact on everybody, that he was such a good friend. And, my job is to create positive experiences and create a positive future for 800 student athletes at any point in time at Michigan State. And Mike had the ability to do that for me, to make me smile, to make me laugh, to make me think harder. And we developed that relationship. And when Mark shared the news with me, it was devastating. And he's like a son. He's friends with my kids. Sister Katie is friends. His mom Karen is such a wonderful person, and it's from that moment on, I just feel terrible.
Mark, Mitch Lyons here, and thanks again for coming on. I know it's tough for you, and I know you were tight with Mike, and as athletic director, like you said, you're overseeing 800 athletes. You certainly don't have the time to have a relationship like you did with Mike, and I know you were closer to him than you are with a lot of kids, just simply because of there's not enough of you to go around. But I guess maybe talk about how that built up over time. And when he first stepped foot on campus, I know he was a much ballyhooed recruit, and an amazing student athlete in the classroom as well. Maybe take us through how you kind of got to know Mike over his 5 years on campus.
It's probably because we both had very sarcastic humor that sort of just blended together. And, good or bad about Twitter, that's what developed the relationship, was a few banters back and forth. He got a few comments out there that I thought was a little edgy, and he ended up in the what I call the principal's office, and that created opportunities, from adversity. Why did you say this? And his explanation was always rock solid. He always had the answer. But it was those office meetings, it's when you bring up a point and then you end up having an hour and a half conversation after that point has been made. It talks about the friendship, not just questioning of, a few choice words that maybe went out. And that's where the relationship built, and then it just continued on whenever we saw each other, like he was with everyone else. He smiled and you smiled. And I think many of our other student athletes said when he walked in the room was a better place, and just going to be so sorely missed.
Yeah, you telling the Twitter story. I believe it may have been you I reached out to, because I was fairly new to Twitter, and I was following him, and I saw something that was questionable, and I'm sure I probably bounced it off you, and that might have been one of your conversations with him. But I remember.
Very likely, and his pursuit of getting a law degree out at Stanford. Of course, we have friends out there, Bernard Muir, Mike Longacre, who played basketball here with Magic.
Sure.
And, we reached out to them and was creating a path for him to have some great mentors at Stanford. So I've already reached out to Bernard and told him that, you've never met this guy, but you can never forget this guy, that Palo Alto is going to be the next stop in his life. And hopefully, and I know Bernard thinks as fondly of him just through the stories that I've shared with him over the past several months while we were trying to get his application accepted at the law school there.
Mark Hollis is our guest on the Metro Health Medicine guest line, the Michigan State University Athletic Director. And Mark, what impact did this young man, Mike Sadler, have after graduation on this football team? Obviously, we all know he was at the Coles National Invitational Scholarship Camp for high school kickers and punters at a school in Wisconsin. And is he the guy that worked with your program post graduation? Did he always have some valuable things to pass along to the now punters on this Michigan State football team?
Oh, I think way beyond the punters. And yes, he was around our football program, constantly sharing laughs, sharing information, sharing what to expect. He's one of those guys that's so good with young people, whether they're freshmen on our team or kids, that you just connect with him. I think he's so smart, and I think he was almost bored and was so excited about the Stanford law school experience that he was going to have, because the football experience keeps you extremely busy. The academic component, the athletic component, he was constantly busy, and that was taken away when football was done. And he was really looking forward to the experience he was going to have at Stanford, and that was going to be the next exhilarating part. So absolutely, he was around. He was talking to our freshmen. He was talking to the whole team. But it's kind of like Izzo. Izzo coaches one sport, but he has an impact on 25 sports. Mike was the same way, and I think you saw that pour out with all the comments that have been made.
Mark Hollis, the athletic director of Michigan State, with us. We talked to Coach D, and he said that he had been in contact with Nebraska coach Mike Riley. Have you reached out to the athletic department at Nebraska, and if so, can you share with us what happened there?
Yeah, I've talked to both Sean at Nebraska as well as Joe Oliva at LSU, and I think it's probably what you expect. We're all just deeply, deeply saddened. Talk about, there's so many negative stories that come out in college sports, or frankly that come out in our society today. And this is something that humanizes it and puts it back into perspective, that we as people, we as friends, we as family members, so important that, today you appreciate what you have in your life. You have memories of those that were here before, and puts a lot of things into perspective for ADs, and that's where some of those conversations went with Sean and Joe, and well beyond with other athletic administrators. What we do is very good. What our student athletes do is phenomenal, and we have to remember that through all the negative stories that pop up along the way.
Mark, I think part of what helps, start the healing process for all of us is, thinking back on, for me, just the last 24 hours, 36 hours, just thinking back some of the, like you said, so much of Mike's wit was played out on Twitter, the exchanges with Fo Pelini, the parody account for Bo Pelini, and, petting the imaginary cat. And, I think back of walking in Pat Narduzzi's office and seeing it plastered with Mike, photos of Mike in his Speedo from spring break. And Narduzzi just shaking his head. Are there, is there anything that, I know you're numb and it's all happened so fast, is there anything that really pops out in your head as far as just some of the craziness maybe you had to deal with, or just witness from afar or through Twitter?
No, the Bo Pelini one was one of the fun ones to watch, but I think, anytime that I would put something serious out, he was quick to humanize it and bring me back down to earth a little bit. And this is college sports, and while there's a serious tone to it, it's also just college sports. And Mike was quick to kind of remind you of that with a little shot every once in a while. It might be 3 words, but it was it was always done in his way, and it was pretty classy.
Yeah. Well, thanks for joining us, Mark. I know it's a tough time for all of Spartan Nation, but especially you and your family. And we just, thank you for leading the athletic department and being such a positive influence on a lot of people's lives. So thanks for coming on today.
Thanks so much, Mitch. Go Green.
Go White.
Mark Hollis, athletic director at Michigan State University, joining us on the Metro Health Medicine guest line today. And, I tell you what, you could tell that Mark Hollis was having a little trouble reminiscing about one Mike Sadler.
Yeah, no question. And Mark's, he's just a good human. He really is. He's just, he's solid, as our, 2 top coaches are, Coach D and Coach Izzo. They're good people. And he really does. He's a guy that I just respect a ton. I mean, he always is thinking of the kids, and as he said, bringing a positive impact to their life through their experience at Michigan State. And he did know Mike real well, and obviously it's impacted him. But he'll he'll keep plodding just like the rest of us, and we'll work through this. But the great thing is we have a lot of fun, great memories of Mike to share with one another.
We've asked people to share their thoughts about this tragedy today, maybe with some humor as well. Mike Sadler, the former Michigan State punter, and obviously somebody who's local to our flagship station at 107.3 WBBL-FM in Grand Rapids. And joining us on the Miller Lite Hotline is Rick from Ionia, who has his thoughts. Rick, welcome to the Huge Show. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks, fellas. Just had a quick story about Mike. A couple of years ago, I had the privilege of golfing with him in the Drew Stanton Foundation outing at the Hawk Hollow in Lansing. Are you guys familiar with that?
Sure.
Yep.
Well, anyways, we some friends of mine and I were able to go to this Drew Stanton Foundation, and they do a really good job of putting a star or a athlete with every group. And we got there that day, and they said, "Hey, Mike Sadler's going to be golfing with your group today." We got all excited. What a great guy! What a great young man he was, and just had a great time playing golf with him. We were excited because usually punters and kickers are known to be good golfers. And he walked out to our golf carts, and he walked up with a pair of khaki shorts and some loafers, and he said, "Fellas, just want to let you know right now, I can't golf." We actually had a great time. His humor, his quick wit was so enjoyable. I was in utter shock when I saw it on my phone. And we had just a real quick story. We were on this one hole, and we needed him to make the shot. And he took a divot about 12 inches long, and the divot went farther than the ball did. And we just had pictures and such a good time, such a laugh. And he was just full of life, quick humor. I enjoyed following him on Twitter, and he's going to be greatly missed. I was just absolutely shocked. But I was so glad we got to spend 5 or 6 hours with him in a golf outing for the Drew Stanton Foundation. It was a great time.
Rick, thanks for sharing your story. We certainly appreciate it. And if you have a story to share with us, you can certainly do that. We're foregoing our MontelConstruction.com huge question of the day in favor of questions or comments, I should say, that come from you about Mike Sadler, the former Michigan State punter, and, of course, the Forest Hills Northern graduate from West Michigan. If you have any stories to pass along, feel free to call us at 866-838-HUGE. Mitch Lyons in the studio, Joe Jason for Bill Simonson, and more on the life of Mike Sadler after this.
Michael Robert Sadler with high honor.
Mike Sadler under pressure to bang one here. He'll take the snap at his 10-yard line. Oh, he'll run it. He runs to his right. He's at the 25 and the 30. He's still with it out at the 40-yard line. Out of bounds with a first down and change at the 49-yard line.
Somebody would ask me, how much time I spent in the weight room this past offseason, because I think the pipes are looking pretty good. I got some little worms just crawling around in there. No, not really. I'm lucky enough to have some fun questions be asked to me, and I like to have fun with it.
Mike Sadler with his 5th punt of the ball game. Riley McCarron deep for Iowa. Oh, it's a fake. Mike Sadler running to his right. He's got some green grass in front of him. He's into Iowa territory, and he's out of bounds across the way with a first down and then some, folks. Nico Law knocked him out of bounds. Mike Sadler continues to do great things for the Spartans.
Now that my career here is coming to a close, I've had a lot of time to kind of look back and reflect on everything that I've done. And I've been very fortunate in my time here at Michigan State to have lots of success, both as a team and as an individual. I think winning the 2014 Rose Bowl is probably the highlight of my time here, something that hasn't been done in decades at Michigan State. Individually, I've also had a very good career. I've been an All-American both on and off the field. And really the academic awards mean more to me than anything, just because those are going to be with me for my whole life. We understand that our athletic careers are fleeting and they're not going to last forever. But what we do in the classroom and what we will learn while we're here is really going to be with us for a lifetime.
You're listening to the Mike Sadler Tribute Show on the Huge Radio Network. Help honor the legacy of Mike by visiting michaelsadlerfoundation.com. That's michaelsadlerfoundation.com. We now continue with the Mike Sadler Tribute Show on the Huge Radio Network.
Welcome back to the Huge Show, all across the Huge Radio Network. Miller Hotline's open at 866-838-HUGE, 866-838-4843. If you want to share any stories, like we had just a little while ago with Rick from Ionia, who played golf in a golf outing with Mike Sadler. And the terrible news that former Michigan State punter Mike Sadler died in a car accident in Wisconsin. The 24-year-old was the driver in a single-car crash. Police say Sadler's car lost control on wet pavement and left the roadway, struck a tree. Pronounced dead at the scene, along with Nebraska punter Sam Foltz, who died in that crash. LSU kicker Colby Delahousse was reported to the hospital with injuries. They were all attending a weekend punting camp. And that punting camp, by the way, was the Coles National Invitational Scholarship Camp for high school kickers and punters at a high school in the town of Wales in Wisconsin. Just kind of showed the kind of guy, the young man that Mike Sadler was, a guy who was always giving back to his craft. And not only was a great student athlete, obviously an academic All-American with Michigan State for 4 years, was on his way to Stanford to finish a law degree, to actually start and finish a law degree. Obviously, it hits kind of close to home, especially with our flagship station in Grand Rapids at 107.3 FM WBBL, because Mike was a graduate of Forest Hills Northern High School. So if you have any high school memories with him, any college memories, or any memories of playing in foursomes of golf, we certainly welcome your calls at 866-838-HUGE. Joe Jason for Bill Simonson. Mitch Lyons is here, Spartan forever and a former Forest Hills Northern Husky himself, an 88 graduate. So this kind of hits close to home, kind of doubly for somebody like you, Mitch, to see this young man. And you knew him, you knew about his humor, you knew the kind of guy he was, and he's just, I guess he's kind of the son that, when you look at it, it's like, wow, there's a perfect son right there. 24 years old, going to go on to get his law degree. I mean, he's the kind of young man that moms brag about.
Yeah, as a parent of 3 daughters, not that you're ever elated when they bring home a boy, but if you're gonna bring one home, Mike wouldn't be a bad mold to take it out of. So great kid, and just it's an honor to even be on here and be talking about him, and sharing some stories with some other callers and whatnot. But he just I've said it multiple times, but just challenges you to try to live your life the right way and make an impact. And I mean, you never saw the guy without a smile on his face, and there's a lot of times in life where we maybe don't have that smile on our face, and it's never that bad, and to have a little humor like Mike had, and self-deprecating humor, as you had said, and always talking about his biceps, which were non-existent, and this, that, and the other thing, and always thought of himself as the running back. And it was funny just looking at Twitter yesterday with some of the pictures that his former teammates had sent, pictures from picture day and stuff, where groups of position players get their picture taken together, for the coaches to send out, and use for recruiting and stuff like that. And I'm looking at a picture of all the quarterbacks with their back to the camera. Here's a 5 or 6 quarterbacks between scholarship and walk-on guys, and there's number 3, Sadler, and he sends out the tweet. And he's got a phone up to his ear. It's taken from a ways back, but he's got his phone up to his ear, and he's looking up in the press box. He says, "Can you hear me now?" Good. just crazy stuff like that. He's not even a quarterback, but he's in the picture, and he's doing a Verizon pose. It's just that was the kind of just crazy humor he had. I saw another one where he's taking a snap, and that Brian Allen posted today, where he's taking a snap from Brian Allen through one of the tunnels, one of the concourse entrances to the stadium, and you can see the field out behind him, and he's calling signals under center. It's just crazy stuff. I mean, a prom picture with Connor Cook, I remember him tweeting out, with his hands on Connor's hips, and just posing like you would in high school for a prom picture. Just stupid stuff, but he was just a funny guy.
Some of the many stories, we celebrate the life of Mike Sadler, who lost his life in a single-car accident. Our thanks this past hour to Mark Hollisey, Athletic Director of Michigan State, and also the head football coach, Mark D'Antonio, for joining us. Joe Jason for Bill Simonson. You're listening to The Huge Show on the Huge Radio Network.
You're listening to the Mike Sadler Tribute Show on the Huge Radio Network. Help honor the legacy of Mike by visiting michaelsadlerfoundation.com. That's michaelsadlerfoundation.com. 2 years ago today, former Grand Rapids, Forest Hills Northern, and Michigan State punter Mike Sadler unexpectedly passed away in a car accident in Wisconsin. To honor his legacy, the Huge Radio Network will replay the Mike Sadler Tribute Show we originally aired on July 25th, 2016, to celebrate the life of Mike Sadler on and off the field.
Welcome back to the Huge Show all across the Huge Radio Network. It's Joe Jason sitting in for Bill Simonson today. Mitch Lyons is in studio with us as well, a Spartan for life and a former Husky at Forest Hills Northern High School, and he was brought in the studio today because a tragic death of former Michigan State punter Mike Sadler, a driver in a car that containing two other kickers, and also losing his life was Nebraska punter Sam Foltz, who died in the crash. LSU kicker Colby Delahousse transported to a hospital with injuries. They were all attending a weekend punting camp, the Coles National Invitational Scholarship Camp for high school kickers. And for Mike Sadler, obviously, it's doubly tough to take for the people in West Michigan, because not only was Mike Sadler a part of the Michigan State football family and the Spartan Nation, but also he was part of the Forest Hills Northern family in West Michigan that's so near and dear to the people in Grand Rapids on our flagship station, 107.3 WBBL FM. And so Mitch is in the studio with us today. And Mitch, you've, over the last couple of hours, has been very nice to have you here, because you've had an opportunity to kind of put a silver lining bow, if you will, or maybe a smile on the faces of many who knew Mike as kind of the funniest guy, and not only the smartest guy in the room, but maybe the funniest guy in the room too.
Yeah, I think it's to be honest with you, it's helped me just to come in here and talk about him and hear other people talk about him, and it just helps the healing process. It's not going to go away quickly, and certainly not for his family, and that's what tears me up the most, is just what they're going through. But you just keep moving on, and the more we share with one another, and hopefully over time it'll. The pain will dissipate, but the memories won't, and that's the important thing. Is he left some great memories for all of us to enjoy.
All of our guests do appear courtesy of the Metro Health Medicine guest line. And joining us now to talk about Mike Sadler is a friend of Mike's and a former MSU football player himself. Number 63 is with us, Travis Jackson from Michigan State University. Travis, thanks so much for being here today and sharing your thoughts on Mike Sadler. I know it's got to be a tough day for you, but we certainly appreciate you being with us today and talking to us all across the state of Michigan. Thanks so much.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Tell us a little bit about how a guy from New Albany, Ohio, winds up partnering up with Mike Sadler, becoming buddies. How did that? When did you first run into Mike, and how did your relationship develop over time?
Yeah, we came in with that 2010 class, and I think it kind of all starts freshman year. And from the second Mike walks in a room, he kind of commands attention, and you could tell there's something special about him. And there was a really cool block of rooms down in Case Hall. Connor Cruz and Mike Sadler lived together, and then Maxwell and Nico Palazetti's rooms were attached to each other. So I think our whole recruiting class spent a lot of time in those two rooms, because those are just, four very charismatic guys. And I remember I think it was our sophomore or junior year, and they asked me and Mike to come on to President Simon's radio show. And we're sitting across from each other, and President Simon's asking us questions, and we start kind of just feeding off of each other like we did when we're just together hanging out. And we're like, man, maybe we should do something with this. And he's kind of the genius behind the whole thing. And if you know Mike, when he wants to do something, he gets it done. So that's kind of how we paired up on tickets then.
Mike, your sophomore season, Travis, you had an injury. A lot of times, the mental state as well as the physical state can play into that. Did Mike have any help for you at all when you went down with that knee injury and a broken leg back in 2012? I mean, did he provide some comic relief for you to get you through all that?
Yeah, you spent time with the specialists.
because you're doing lifting while the other guys are practicing. Specialists come on for their periods, and then once they were done, if they had it done early in practice, they come in the weight room with the injured guys, and he always brought a lot of comic relief. And not only that, you know, he made you feel special. I think that's something that he was really good at doing. When you had some one-on-one time with him, or you just ran into him for 10 to 20 seconds, a way of making you feel special. And I think you're kind of seeing that through the social media and the people all reaching out, how many people that he made feel special.
Travis, Mitch Lyons here, and thanks again for coming on. I know it's a painful day for you, but we're trying to help the healing process here. Just telling some stories amongst ourselves, and it's been great. We had Coach Dion and Mark Hollis, and it's great to have you on. So, I've shared a couple things that kind of just cracked me up over the time, and petting the cat and plastering Narduzzi's office with pictures of him and his Speedo, and what are some things you obviously spent a lot of time, whether it was Case Hall or over at the football building. What are maybe some story or two you might be able to share with the audience, just to kind of just show what kind of nut he was?
Yeah, honestly, as we all been grieving here, you find yourself. And you find a little chuckle here and there just because of something he did or the way he made you feel. And as you're going to, post something to him and you want to honor him, it's almost tough sometimes not to put up those funny pictures because, that's how we would have wanted it.
Absolutely.
And I was kind of going through Twitter today, and I saw, let's celebrate his life, and obviously in a very tough time, but kind of actually one of my, when I think of Mike Sadler, one of the things is that he made the most of everything. Anything he did, finished his bachelor's degree in like 2.5 years, finished his master's, going to Stanford Law School. Like, he just made the most out of anything. But he also did that in some pretty funny ways. And I actually got married, and he came out, and we're at my wedding. And so it was open bar, but of course Sadler wasn't happy with how small the drink glasses were, and they weren't selling doubles. So I'm walking around talking to people, and he comes up to me, and he had taken one of the candles out of the candle holders and made the bar fill it up with his favorite drink. And it was just the most. It was just perfect Mike Sadler. It was just the way that he made the most of things. It made it so funny. And I was just dying laughing. I was like, only he could get away with that. And then I swear an hour later, he comes up with one of the vases that our flowers were in. He had filled that up with wine, and it was just so perfect. And he's walking around, huge smile on his face. And it was kind of one of those things where it would be, my last memory being with him was him coming up, giving me a big hug at the end of the night, and just in perfect fashion, just made with those two interactions with him and spending time with him Friday night, just, made a weekend that was special, so much more special. And that's kind of what he's done at MSU and has done with his whole life. And, and some say it was short, but he just made a huge impact in those years. And it's tough, man. It still doesn't feel real, be honest with you, and kind of dreading the whole closure thing. But he's just such a special guy, and I think, honestly, when we get together, I think the laughs will go around, and I think that's exactly how he would have wanted it.
Travis Jackson with us, the former Michigan State football player, close friend of Mike Sadler. Being a guy from Ohio and Mike being a guy from Michigan, and you obviously got a lot of love during your high school career from the Columbus Dispatch. For most people in Michigan, there's not a whole lot of love for Columbus or most places in Ohio. Was Mike ever in your grill about any of that?
Nah, he was pretty cool about it. I think he had a lot of decisions. I mean, there's not much you can do when you argue with Mike because he's smarter than you. So
sure.
there's not much. If you tried to argue with Mike, that's just a losing battle. So anytime I just, yep, you got it, Mike. I took his side on things, and that's kind of how he was, just so smart, so witty. You don't want to get in, as you can see on Twitter, you don't want to get into a beef with him.
Well, Travis, your class in particular, had a one of the most storied runs in MSU history, and you and Mike in that class, obviously. and I think back on the Kirk Cousins and the guys that came after him in terms of the leadership skills. What set Mike apart? I was talking to the guys earlier about with kickers, they're kind of the non-football players on the team, so to speak. They're not out there busting their hump every day in the same way like you grunts on the offensive line and defensive line are. How did Mike lead as a punter? He was a humorous guy, but tell us a little bit about what kind of role he played from that standpoint for maybe younger guys on the team.
Yeah, and you touched on it there. From a field standpoint, they may not have as be in the grind with them, but in the locker room, they're another guy in there, and and that's where he was so important, man. He was just always in that locker room, keeping people up. There's those days when you get down, and everyone has those, and he'd always be cracking jokes and making light of things. Definitely during camp, and you know how he is with his dry sense of humor, and it made you feel better about your situation. And like I said before, he had just that way of making someone feel special in so short a time, and just being in the presence of someone like that is just so healthy, and that's the impact that he left on the Spartans. And I think he kind of epitomized exactly what Coach D was looking for. Coach D always preached, I'm not looking just for a football player. I'm looking for a good man who is a football player. And I think Mike Sadler was everything that Coach D looked for. It was kind of the model recruit.
Well, he certainly was, Travis, and you're a good man yourself, and we certainly appreciate you coming on. And I know it's going to be a tough time saying goodbye and bringing closure, but I know that's going to be start of the healing process when all you guys get together and have some laughs at Mike's memories and whatnot. So hang in there, buddy, and thanks a lot. And I love you as a brother, and thanks for coming on.
I love you too, Mitch. Thanks, Joe.
You bet. Travis Jackson with us, the former Michigan State football player, close friend of Mike Sadler, joining us on the Metro Health Medicine guest line. It's kind of interesting to hear the humorous story. Part of it want to make you laugh, part of it want to make you cry. It kind of makes you want to cry with everything that you see this young man so full of life, and all of a sudden that's just gone. Yeah, and you could hear it in Travis's voice. I mean, Travis is a great kid too. I mean, his parents I got to know real well in his time there, and just a solid kid, like you said. Coach D, tries to get good men and good football players, and those are two of the finest right there. And he spoke of. I kind of forgot that when he was talking about he and Mike doing the interviews with Coach Simon. Well, they ended up doing a podcast themselves the last couple of years after that. That's what he was referencing there, and where they had their own little weekly show, and both pretty witty guys. So. But yeah, with Travis getting married, I saw some of the pictures from that day with the guys lined up and whatnot. So it'll be tough saying goodbye, but like I said, hopefully it'll help these guys heal. And we are hearing some healing stories, not only from the Michigan State Spartan family, but we'll get some stories as well now from Forest Hills Northern. Joining us is the principal of the Huskies, John Gregory, joining us on the Metro Health Medicine guest line. Joe Jason in for Bill Simonson. John, thanks so much for stopping by and being able to share some time with us about Mike. Tell us about, first of all, thank you, and secondly, tell us about how your relationship started with Mike Sadler.
Well, thanks for having me. I think very similar to a lot of the stories you've heard, just when Mike comes into a room, he lights up the room and you're drawn to him. It's not like he walks in and has an ego that he wants you to be there. It's just his charisma just draws you into him. So early on in his high school career, he's just somebody that starts talking to you and you build that relationship over time.
Tell us a little bit about him as a football player. Obviously, you know him as a punter, but obviously to be that kind of an athlete and to obviously punt at a high level in the Big Ten and for the Michigan State Spartans, what kind of an athlete was he in school?
Well, he also played basketball, and he's just one of those kids who was driven. He was driven to do the very best that he could. He was the kind of kid who would be down there in the summer asking if he could be on the field to practice his punting, or he'd be there after practice in the gym taking extra shots. He just wanted to do what he could do to help the team be a success.
John, Mitch Lyons here. Maybe tell us a little bit about Mike in terms of coming back. I know I read an article, I think maybe it was you quoted, that said he'd come back this spring. Was that a regular occurrence for Mike coming back, maybe in the summers or on school breaks and whatnot?
Absolutely. He would show up a couple times a year, whether it was just to stop in and say hello to office staff, teachers. He would go into our broadcasting room and be interviewed and help the students in the broadcasting room work on their skills. Stop down and talk to Coach Moffitt, the new football coach today, and he said Mike was just there in the last couple of weeks working with some of the players this summer down on the field. So it was something where Mike was consistently stopping in and giving back to the Huskies.
Yeah, well, that's being a former Husky myself. I'd always share a little, Husky pride wink or a high five or fist bump with him, and I was glad to see him come on there when he came, and it certainly was a joy watching him. And it's pretty fresh still, but any thoughts on maybe doing something within the school to honor Mike's legacy?
Absolutely. We've had some preliminary conversations about doing some different things, but really want to wait till we can have that conversation with the family as well to make sure we're honoring Mike in the right way and the way that they see fit as well, and so they can be a part of that. Sure.
John, tell us what goes through your mind a little bit. Your head has to be spinning a little bit. First of all, you hear the news. The television station, wants you to come down and be on TV. You're asked to be here on the huge show and talk. What races through your mind? You want to remember some things. You have some things you want to obviously honor Mike with, some of the storytelling, but it almost has to be like a fire drill.
Absolutely. It's still that shock. It's that, God, I wish I'd just wake up and figure that it was a nightmare, find out it was a nightmare. I got that call yesterday, and it was like, this can't be. It's Mike Sadler. He had so much in front of him yet, and knowing Mike, he had so much to give that we're going to miss out on. You're going to miss seeing him show up with that smile on his face and either dressed all goofy like he would every once in a while in school, or reading his Twitter feed and just all those things. It's not going to be there, and that hurts.
And I'm sure, we talk about it in the athletic sense. Everyone's talking about him as a punter, but I'm sure that there are people in the Forest Hills Northern Husky family right now who are feeling this a great loss on the academic side too. A lot of teachers and a lot of people who are mentors of Mike who didn't have anything to do with sports and are feeling just as bad as everybody else at this point as well.
Absolutely. I think that you probably could not find a teacher that was in the building when Mike was there, even if they didn't have him as a student, that didn't know Mike Sadler. Again, just because of who he was and the type of person he was. And I've heard from several staff members already just who are hurting and, want to know what they can do to help and remember Mike and do something to honor his legacy that he left at Northern High School.
John, one thing I've tried to do today is try to lighten it up a little bit with each person that has come on, whether it's coaches or ex-teammates. His hijinks at MSU is well known, but I'm sure it stemmed from some earlier hijinks at the high school level. Are there any, maybe over the last couple of days, stories that you remember maybe that came up, just some of his humor, maybe that are hijinks or pranks or whatever that come to mind from his days at Forest Hills Northern?
Yeah, I think some of the things we were talking about even today in the building were when he would just show up with maybe one other buddy and they'd be dressed just something goofy. One time they showed up as lumberjacks and they were wearing Daisy Dukes and long wigs and flannel shirts. Another day they showed up and they were wearing skirts and dressed up like nursemaids. Another student just reminded me today, and I don't recall this, but in fact he posted it on his Twitter feed. Mike was the kind of person that just got along with everybody, and he's the only person he knew that could walk down the middle of the hallway dressed in just a Speedo and gold medals around his neck looking like an Olympic swimmer and get away with it. So that was Mike. I mean, that was, of course, before all the social media, so he had to find his other ways to have that creative outlet go out there. But, again, always respectful and just a great, great guy.
Yeah, well, thanks for sharing those memories. That's funny. And the Speedo thing, I guess, started earlier than I thought. I know there was some Speedo stories at MSU, and I shared earlier how he plastered Pat Narduzzi's office with pictures of him in the Speedo. And not just pictures in the Speedo, they were, punting form with his foot raised all the way up. Things you don't want to see a guy doing in a Speedo. And he had him all over Narduzzi's office. It's funny to hear that he even did it back at FHN. So, well, thanks a lot for coming on. I know it's a painful time for you, but we sure appreciate you sharing some of that and just kind of helping us all heal by sharing together.
Well, thank you very much.
Thanks, John. John Gregory, Forest Hills Northern Principal, joining us on the Huge Radio Network, part of the Metro Health Medicine guest line, where all of our guests do appear. More to come, along with Mitch Lyon in studio. It's Joe Jason for Bill Simonson as we continue with more on the life of Mike Sadler after this.
Michael Robert Sadler with high honor.
Sadler under pressure to bang one here. He'll take the snap at his 10-yard line. Oh, he'll run it. He runs to his right. He's at the 25 and the 30. He's still with it out at the 40-yard line. Out of bounds with a first down and change at the 49-yard line.
Somebody would ask me, how much time I spent in the weight room this past offseason, because I think the pipes are looking pretty good. I got some little worms just crawling around in there. No, not really. No, I'm lucky enough to have some fun questions be asked of me, and I like to have fun with it.
Mike Sadler with his 5th punt of the ball game. Riley McCarron deep for Iowa. Oh, it's a fake. Mike Sadler running to his right. He's got some green grass in front of him. He's into Iowa territory, and he's out of bounds across the way with a first down and then some, folks. Nico Law knocked him out of bounds. Mike Sadler continues to do great things for the Spartans.
Now that my career here is coming to a close, I've had a lot of time to kind of look back and reflect on everything that I've done. And I've been very fortunate in my time here at Michigan State to have lots of success, both as a team and as an individual. I think winning the 2014 Rose Bowl is probably the highlight of my time here, something that hasn't been done in decades at Michigan State. Individually, I've also had a very good career. I've been an All-American both on and off the field. And really the academic awards mean more to me than anything, just because those are going to be with me for my whole life. We understand that our athletic careers are fleeting and they're not going to last forever. But what we do in the classroom and what we will learn while we're here is really going to be with us for a lifetime.
You're listening to the Mike Sadler Tribute Show on the Huge Radio Network. Help honor the legacy of Mike by visiting michaelsadlerfoundation.com. That's michaelsadlerfoundation.com. We now continue with the Mike Sadler Tribute Show on the Huge Radio Network.
Broadcasting live from the Auto Value Bumper to Bumper Parts Store studios, Joe Jason for Bill Simonson on The Huge Show. Become a fan of The Huge Show on Facebook by logging on to thehugeshow.net. All of our guests appear courtesy of the Metro Health Medicine guest line. And we thank our guests earlier today. Drew Neitzel, former Michigan State University guard, joining us. Athletic Director Mark Hollis from Michigan State, and also head football coach Mark D'Antonio joining us today. Travis Jackson, the former Michigan State football player, close friend of Mike Sadler, joined us, and John Gregory, the Forest Hills Northern Principal, all joining us. The tragedy that affected the lives of many in West Michigan, especially across our flagship station at 107.3 FM WBBL, as Mike Sadler, the former punter of Michigan State, was killed in a tragic car accident. We've been honoring his memory with a lot of humorous stories and people who knew him, including Donna from Saline, who now joins us on the Miller Lite hotline to talk about one Mike Sadler. Donna, thanks for hanging on there. We appreciate it. Welcome to the Huge Show.
Thank you.
Well, tell us a little bit about your relationship and how you knew Mike Sadler.
So my son is Tabor Pepper, the long snapper at MSU the past 4 years. Mm-hmm. But the first 3 of those, Mike was his punter. So not a lot of people always know much about the specialists, but the specialists are the punters, the kickers, and the long snappers. And just like any other position, they have their own team meetings and, position meetings. So it's pretty much, those 5, 6, 7 guys in a room together a lot of the time.
Sure.
So, obviously those specialists have gotten to be really close. And then on the flip side of that, the parents, MSU parents travel well anyway, but the specialist parents tend to, stay in the hotels together and, grab dinner together before or after a game and tailgate, with all the other parents as well. So we've gotten to be good friends with his parents and, see Mike. And even since he's graduated, he was at the bowl game this year and hung out with us the night after the game and the night before the game. So, they become a part of your family. You have your own son there, but you magically have 99 other sons also.
Sure. Now, Taylor was, he's a little bit younger, right, than Mike? Is that what it was?
Tabor he graduated a year behind Mike, but Mike had a redshirt season, I believe, and Tabor did not. So they're probably 2 years difference in age, but just a year apart from graduating from school.
Donna, thanks so much. Donna Pepper on the phone with us, talking about her son Tabor Pepper, who's just 22 years old and the long snapper for the Spartans, but we certainly appreciate her call. We've got Donna back on the phone right now. Can we go to her real quick? Donna, I'm glad you're with us. Thanks for rejoining us.
I was sitting in the same spot, so I'm not sure how that happened.
No,
but anyway, our friends, the wife is on staff at Mike's high school, and they've gotten a staff text message, and they called to give us their condolences, and we had not heard. Most of the boys had not heard yet, so it was quite a shock. I had to pull over on the side of the road and kind of digest it, for a few minutes, and it's stunning. Obviously, I mean, you don't think about with these boys this age that that this could be the last time you see them or whatever, but sadly they and their parents are learning that lesson the hard way. So it's, the last thing I said to my husband before bed was, I think it's always sad when you lose someone and someone young especially, but with Mike, he was just such a big personality that is what leaves so much emptiness. And it's not, when I say a big personality, it's not like he was the center of attention necessarily. People wanted to be with him, and to hear him and to hear the wit that you keep hearing people talk about, because it was wicked. He had an amazing wit. He was funny. He always was smiling. He was a funny guy.
Well, Donna, I know this hasn't been easy for you, but we certainly appreciate your time. Thanks so much for calling in and sharing your thoughts. You bet. Donna Pepper with us, who is the mother of Tabor Pepper, the long snapper for Michigan State and close friend, of course, with Mike Sadler. And we've been honoring his memory today with some humorous stories and obviously the gut-wrenching story that all took us by surprise as the former Michigan State player killed in a car accident along with Nebraska's punter as well, and another injured punter in that accident. But we wish well to all of the Sadler family and all those associated, not only with Michigan State football, but the friends and families at Forest Hills Northern as well. We thank, Mitch Lyons for being in studio with us today, Drew Neitzel, the former Michigan State guard who knew him, Coach Mark D'Antonio, who joined us from the football team, Mark Hollis, the athletic director, and Travis Jackson, the former MSU player, close friend of Mike's, and John Gregory, the Forest Hills Northern principal, for joining us as well. Joe Jason in for Bill Simonson today, all across the state of Michigan, and we're celebrating the life of Mike Sadler right here on the Huge Radio Network.
Michael Robert Sadler with high honor.
Sadler under pressure to bang one here. He'll take the snap at his 10-yard line. Oh, he'll run it. He runs to his right. He's at the 25 and the 30. He's still with it out at the 40-yard line. Out of bounds with a first down and change at the 49-yard line.
somebody would ask me, how much time I spent in the weight room this past offseason, because I think the pipes are looking pretty good. I got some little worms just crawling around in there. No, not really. I'm lucky enough to have some fun questions be asked of me, and I like to have fun with it.
Mike Sadler with his 5th punt of the ball game. Riley McCarron deep for Iowa. Oh, it's a fake. Mike Sadler running to his right. He's got some green grass in front of him. He's into Iowa territory, and he's out of bounds across the way with a first down and then some, folks. Nico Law knocked him out of bounds. Mike Sadler continues to do great things for the Spartans.
Now that my career here is coming to a close, I've had a lot of time to kind of look back and reflect on everything that I've done. And I've been very fortunate in my time here at Michigan State to have lots of success, both as a team and as an individual. I think winning the 2014 Rose Bowl is probably the highlight of my time here, something that hasn't been done in decades at Michigan State. Individually, I've also had a very good career. I've been an All-American both on and off the field, and really the academic awards mean more to me than anything, just because those are going to be with me for my whole life. We understand that our athletic careers are fleeting and they're not going to last forever, but what we do in the classroom and what we will learn while we're here is really going to be with us for a lifetime.
You're listening to the Mike Sadler Tribute Show on the Huge Radio Network. Help honor the legacy of Mike by visiting michaelsadlerfoundation.com. That's michaelsadlerfoundation.com. We now continue with the Mike Sadler Tribute Show on the Huge Radio Network.
Joe Jason in for Bill Simonson right here on the Huge Radio Network. Thanks to all of our guests again. Drew Neitzel, Mark Hollis, the AD at MSU, head coach Mark D'Antonio, Travis Jackson, John Gregory from Forest Hills Northern, and all of you who have called in today honoring the memory of Mike Sadler, who was tragically killed in a car accident. And that has been the focus of our show today, and especially the people who are hurting all across West Michigan, the Forest Hills Northern family as well. Over the years, Mike Sadler has been a featured guest with Bill right here on the Huge Radio Network. And because of that, the fine staff here has put together some interesting clips that I'm sure you'll enjoy. So over the years, like we said, Mike has been a featured guest with Bill right here on the Huge Radio Network. So what we'd like to do is leave you today with some special moments that Mike Sadler had with interactions with Bill. And what it will show you is Mike's true love for Michigan State football.
Mike Sadler, he's joining us live here on the Huge Show across Michigan. Mike, you were part of Mark D'Antonio and the Spartan football program and their rise. You sat there, you played with that football team, you watched it all come together. What was the biggest thing that happened while you were there that really set up the Spartan football program to reach new heights?
Well, I don't think that it was one particular event. I think it was the culmination of having all the right people in the right places at the right time. That goes back to Mark Hollis getting Mark D'Antonio to come to Michigan State. Back when I committed in 2009, this was a program that still really wasn't on its feet. They weren't at the point where they were selling results. They were selling a vision. They were selling hope. But I felt confident in those coaches that they were going to take us to where they said they were going to. And when I came out of high school, I had offers to go to programs that were already established, LSU, Alabama, to name a couple. But the people at MSU really sold me on everything, and I think a lot of people would say the same thing. So having the right people in place and doing things the right way, going about everything with dignity and class, it brings results. It brings results, and it's not something that happens overnight. It takes time, but you can see that the results speak for themselves now.
Mike, you talked about turning down bigger established programs at the time back in 2009 when you were coming out of Grand Rapids, Forest Hills Northern. Is it all about trusting a coach? How much did your parents have a say in it? Is it you by yourself when the coaches are recruiting you, even though bigger established schools were doing it? What really was the selling point that made you say yes to Michigan State?
Well, it was just the right fit overall for me. I obviously valued my parents' input and everything, but they told me that it was my decision and I had to do what was right for me. At Michigan State, I just got the vibe that it would be a good match for me both athletically and academically. And that was a big thing for me coming out of high school. I wanted somewhere that I could redshirt to have that extra year,
not only to prepare on the field, but also to get one more year's worth of education under my belt. They just sold me on Michigan State. The athletic coaches, obviously, and the academic faculty did a great job of setting up a plan for me that we executed, and I'm really glad I went there. I have no regrets.
Mike Sadler, he is joining us in studio, former Spartan punter, and there's a lot of things when you the backstory to talking about where Michigan State football is at today, Mike. You can look at that Alabama game. You can talk about the Minnesota game they had to win. You can look at when they're getting booed off the field and they didn't have a quarterback and then they have a running back, and there's Langford, there's Cook. Look what happened. All these things that almost look like they're scripted out, but they're real. And I guess the common thread is that these teams stayed together.
They always stayed together, and that's it started happening off the field before it happened on the field. So many people see the product but not the process. And this turnaround started as soon as Coach D'Antonio got to campus, and just recruiting some of those guys in his first couple of recruiting classes, whether it's Kirk Cousins or other guys that just had exemplary leadership, good character. It started with them, and that was really the foundation of our program moving forward.
Yeah, and you talk about the off-the-field process. When did that start? When you arrived on campus and you could feel the change happening, you could, not on the field. I'm not talking about wins and losses. I'm talking off the field.
Well, it was something that started before I even got there, to be honest. I think D'Antonio came in 2007, 2008. I came in 2010. So it was something that just seemed natural to me. There was nothing drastic from the time I got there to the time I left. There were some small changes along the way that you notice in retrospect, but I think that started as soon as he got there, as soon as he got to campus, Mark D'Antonio, just recruiting the players he did, going about his business in the way that he did was special. Again, it's not one person, it's not one moment. The only thing that you can point to is Mark D'Antonio's leadership.
Yeah, and then you get the guys, and then you get your classes start getting older. They mature as players on the field, off the field, and it becomes that process that you're talking about.
Yeah. We talk about that all the time. You need to love the process, and you need to love hard work. The first time that I ever met Ken Manny, he didn't ask me anything about football, didn't ask about my grades, fortunately. He looked me right in the eye and said, "Do you love hard work?" Okay, kind of a weird question, especially. And
you're a punter, right?
Yeah, I mean, I'm thinking, okay, I'm going to show up. I'm going to do some bicep curls and be on my way. Not a chance at Michigan State. So they do a really good job of making you love hard work and beating out any entitlement that players have entering. And there's not a lot to begin with. They make sure to weed the entitled people out during the recruiting process. But I think that's another thing that you can point to is just the humility. There's never been a lack of confidence in these teams, but they're always incredibly humble. I remember my freshman year at camp, Harlan Barnett, now the co-defensive coordinator, told everybody to be humble or be humbled. And that's something that just kept popping up throughout the course of my 5 years there. And learning how to handle success was probably more important than learning how to handle failure. And to be able to go through games, to win a lot of football games. I don't know how many football games I started in and won, but it was a lot of them. But just to be able to stay humble throughout the whole process and to stay hungry and always want to be one step better tomorrow than you are today really kept a lot of people going.
When you look back, and Mike Sadler, former Michigan State punter, joining us in studio talking Michigan State football. When you look back on the process, what do you really appreciate that you didn't appreciate as much when you were there, playing for Michigan State and D'Antonio?
Well, this is going to be like the worst cliche that you've ever had on the show, but I didn't stop and smell the roses throughout my time at Michigan State. I was so... Even
at the Rose Bowl?
Maybe a little bit of an exception there, but, the one piece of advice that I give to any player right now is to enjoy everything there. I was always so wrapped up in school or trying to be a better football player.
So intense, maybe too intense. It's self-imposed too intense, right?
Yeah, it is. It is, and it's tough to be happy when when you're always trying to get better. Certainly you need to find a balance of appreciating where you're at but never being satisfied. When you look back on it, though, there was no reason not to enjoy every second. We have a great fan base that's there every Saturday cheering you on. They travel well. They're going to do everything they can for you. We have great leadership, whether it's President Simon, Mark Hollis, Tom Izzo, you name it. There's just so many reasons to be grateful, and it's hard to notice until you actually reflect back on that time. So I was a little bit too absorbed, so I think that would probably be my biggest regret looking back in the last 5 years.
And you're a punter that was too absorbed.
I was.
Nothing against punters being too absorbed, but he just wanted to be the best, class on the field, off the field, and again, you're young, too. You're growing. It's not just football. I mean, when you arrived, what were you, 17, 18 probably, right?
Yeah, 18 years old. 18 years old, but at least at Michigan State, you never see people that are satisfied with just being good at football. Everybody always has a story, something else that they want to be good at. We're never satisfied with being only football players. So we strive for excellence in all areas of our lives, and certainly some people achieve that more so than others do, but it's not just me as a punter, it's not just Connor Cook as a quarterback, Kirk Cousins as a quarterback, or his faith, whatever it is. Everybody wants to do a little bit better than what they're currently doing in any endeavor.
A lot of times when we're done with a school, a coach, maybe sometimes even in a workplace, we appreciate the people who guided us more when we're done or away from them, or there's a change. When you look back, do you appreciate Mark D'Antonio more for what he did for you now than you did when you were playing?
Oh, absolutely. And it's not just limited to Mark D'Antonio. It's Ken Manny especially. He's one of those people.
That strength and conditioning guy's getting a lot of airtime there, Michael.
Yeah, I'll probably get a text from him, and
probably I don't even know run stairs or something at the stadium.
I would probably do it too, because I'm still terrified. But not just Mark D'Antonio, not just Ken Manny, but Mark Hollis. He did a lot for me. All the athletic support staff that was there. There were a whole lot of people that went out of their way to make sure that I could be in this position today. And I'm very grateful for that. And it's one of those things, again, where you're so just tied up in the day-to-day, just waking up early for that workout, getting to class on time, going to practice.
Then it's over, right?
Yeah, it's over just like that. And I think that was probably the most difficult part of the last time we played Alabama in the Capital One Bowl, is as soon as that clock hit zero for the bowl game, the seniors are done. They're gone. There's no more involvement in the program. You fly back in the team charter, and then go your own way. And a lot of people from other schools have struggled with that. I know a lot of people dislike going from so much structure to nothing just overnight. But the coaching staff does a great job at Michigan State of still staying involved in your life, whether that's just giving you a call once a week just to check in what's going on. I get a text from the football operations guys, the minions, if you will, behind the whole thing, saying, hey, Coach D wants to know what you're doing with your life right now. How's everything going? And that kind of stuff just means the world to you, to know that this guy's here making a lot of money to win football games, but he's still going out of his way to make sure that you're doing well as a person. So to answer your question, yes, I loved everything about it. I do appreciate those guys more now that I'm done, now that I can see them more as friends, not coaches. I think that has a big thing to do with it. So, they've had a big impact on my life.
You're listening to the Mike Sadler Tribute Show on the Huge Radio Network. Help honor the legacy of Mike by visiting michaelsadlerfoundation.com. That's michaelsadlerfoundation.com.